You're listening slash watching. That's right, you can watch this one on YouTube if you dare. There might even be some magic, and I'm not talking about my beautiful face. This is You Succeeded How, episode 7 with Arjay Lewis. Arjay has been a magician for over 40 years. He has performed on the street all the way to Broadway. He's an author of horror, paranormal, fantasy, and even a romance mystery book. He has won multiple awards for his books, and his books have been featured in magazines such as H.P. Lovecraft Magazine of Horror, Weird Tales, and Sherlock Holmes Mystery Magazine. In this episode, we talk about his careers and how to be successful as a magician and an author. He even performs magic. This episode is scary good. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of You Succeeded How. Today's guest is Arjay Lewis. He is a magician and author, man of all trades, you could say. I think it's going to be a great episode. So yeah, Arjay, how are you doing, man?
I'm really good, Dwight. Thank you, Frank, so much for having me on.
Yeah, of course. I'm really interested in your career as a magician because I've always been fascinated with magic. You know, I think every kid at one point when they're little, they want to be a magician, or they have this fascination with magic.
Yes, fortunately, one of the reasons people hire magicians is because, oh, my kid really loves magic, so I wanted to get a magician to come and perform at his party. And the interesting thing is, I saw a magician on the streets of New York named Chris Capehart, who is not a household name to normal people, but to those of us in magic. He is very well known because he created a linking ring routine that everybody still talks about. So I saw him street performing and said, and I was in acting school at the time. I went to 1 year of acting school. I'm an acting school dropout. And I saw him doing magic and I said, that would be the coolest thing to learn. So the next day I started learning magic, and a year later I started street performing. Ended up meeting Mr. Capehart again, and he became my mentor for the next 5 years of my career. And the fun thing about street performing, because I street performed in Texas, I street performed in New Orleans, but I was seen street performing in Schubert Alley by a casting director for a Broadway show called Barnum, and got hired for the next 2 years of my life to be on Broadway. So I went literally from a street performer to a Broadway show because of magic. So somebody saw me, and when the guy came up to me, it was like, I'm a casting director for a Broadway show. And I'm like, yeah, sure you are. But I gave my card, and when I got the call for the audition the next day, I was shocked. And I did the right thing. I went in and I said, how do you want this character to be? And they said, oh, it's kind of a barker. It's kind of, so I became this character that got me the job. And that was really the real launch for my career, because everything, casinos and cruise ships and all the other things, kind of came out of that moment and that show.
Awesome. Yeah. Pretty fascinating. I mean, so you kind of already touched on this, your inspiration for magic. And when did you first have this? How old were you when you got interested in magic?
I was 19 years old when I saw Chris Capehart on this performing in Times Square in the 70s. And Times Square was a real seedy place back in the 70s. But I went on to perform there, again, with Mr. Capehart. We used to take turns working corners and watching each other's, to make sure nothing bad happened. And we would take turns performing on the street corners.
What was the difference, you would say, because you went on Broadway and you've done shows in a stage, with a crowd? What was the major difference, performing outside compared to performing on a stage like that? What was the difference there?
The thing on street performing is, and this is one of the things I had to learn, is you kind of have an edge. That's kind of, you're always looking out for whether it's police or somebody to come along and hassle you or something. And the performance is a bit more confrontational. And that was one of the things I had to unlearn. And I learned that from Abner the Eccentric, teaches a class in eccentric performing. And he really, I took a 2-week master class with him, and he really said, you know, you're so aggressive. You know, why don't you be nicer to your audience? And that was a major breakthrough to me, because I very much now treat anybody who comes up on stage and shares the stage with me as a guest, and that they're a guest in my place. And that was a very big breakthrough for me that really was necessary. So again, another one of my teachers pointed out to me what I was doing wrong, and it changed the way I performed.
Yeah. I imagine it would be quite different, just the aspect of, you know, the people who are there for your show, you know, when you're doing a live performance or something like that, like they've come to seen you, right? Or they come to see you, rather than, you know, you're trying to do a street performance. That's a lot different. Just the aspect, you know, you have to catch people's attention, and it's just, I feel like that would be a good prerequisite to doing it for a crowd, like you know, on a stage or something, because you get to learn a lot how to draw people in, like you mentioned, and definitely changing your persona and things like that.
And the thing is, I've done a lot of things like street fairs and things, and it's amazing how the old techniques, because there's 3 techniques in street performance. For those of you who want to run out and become a street performer, here are the 3 techniques you need to know. You need to know how to A, have something to raise a crowd, B, have something to bring the crowd a little closer. Like I always would do a coin thing that would bring people a little bit closer. And 3, how to get the tip, as we used to say. Tip is Carney for collecting the money. So at the end of it, you have to know a way to go to the crowd and ask them for money where they feel good about giving it to you. And those are the 3 techniques. First of all, you get them, you get their attention, then you bring them in, and then at the end you say something. And I would always make jokes about, you know, thank you very much. If you liked what you saw, give what you can. A dime, a nickel, maybe a $50 bill would be greatly appreciated. Whatever you want to give, just fold it up and put it in here. You know, I would do all these lines and jokes, and this money, and by the way, your donation is tax deductible. Well, I'm not paying taxes on it. So I would do routines like that and get people to laugh as they would be leaving. And that was another way to ensure that I would get money.
Interesting. How much did you make when you did those performances on the streets?
I actually did quite well. I was doing very well. So I had a apartment in New York paid for by street performing. Now, of course, this was the 70s, so an apartment in New York was a lot cheaper than it is now. But I actually was able to totally support myself just as a street performer.
Oh, that's amazing. I wouldn't think that, you know, when I see somebody doing street performance, I wouldn't imagine that they're able to, you know, make a living off of that. But, or especially these days, maybe it's, you know, as you said, it was less expensive. It's New York now. I can't imagine living off of that. I guess it's possible, you know, who knows? If you're really talented and you're able to draw people in, like you said. And
well, some of the really great street performers, like I saw Philippe Petit. He's the guy who walked between the World Trade Center towers.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And he would do street shows with a wire that he'd set up. He would pass the hat and there'd be $50 or $100 every time he did a show.
Wow.
I mean, his show was about a half an hour. It was longer than the shows. My shows were 10 to 15 minutes, but his show was like a half an hour. But every time he would make tremendous amounts of money. And this is, again, back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's definitely something that'll draw the crowd in when you're standing on a wire in the middle of the air. That'll definitely draw a crowd for sure. I'm not doing that anytime soon.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of past the point where I want to. Yes.
What are some of the magic tricks that, some of your favorite magic tricks that you've learned over the years? What are some of the favorites?
Well, one of the favorites for me definitely is the Chinese rings, which is a classic in the art of magic. I do a 4-ring routine, and I learned moves from many different magicians. The most important one was Chris Capehart. He does a link called the Impossible Link, where you can literally hold the rings in front of somebody and they see the ring go right through the other one. And it's a move he created, and there's not a lot of people who do it, but it is really astounding. Plus, the thing is the whole routines and get somebody out of the audience to help. And I even throw in I even threw in presidential impressions in the middle of the Chinese ring routine. I would link the rings, and for a perfect example is I would link the rings and said, well, if I could really do this, I wouldn't be here. I'd be putting buildings together for Donald Trump. And then I'd go into I want to tell you that trick is fantastic. I love that trick. It's the best trick ever. And I mean, I would do these things that add to the entertainment value.
Yeah.
And the point is, any really good magic routine gives you the ability to add stuff to it that's funny and fun. Plus, with my ring routine, I get somebody out of the audience and then they do the magic. And that's, again, that really embodies what I believe magic should be, is I made the audience member look good.
Yeah.
And sometimes the audience member takes over the routine. And when that happens, we just let them, because there's nothing more entertaining than getting a kid up on stage and having him be a real ham.
Yeah. So if someone's listening right now, the show's about success, being successful in all different aspects of life. It could be, training your dog, being a magician. So if somebody is listening and they want to be a magician, what do you think are some tips or the key to becoming successful as a magician?
Well, I have been able to make a living for 46 years as a professional magician. I've literally traveled the world. I worked on a cruise ship for 2 years from 2016 to 2018. And I've done casinos and everything else. And the number one thing I would tell anybody who wants to get in any of the variety arts like magic, juggling, any of those unique skills, is to always focus on entertainment. Magicians think it's about the trick. And if I just do this trick, people, and no, the tricks are it's important to have strong skills and good abilities, but the tricks are secondary. The most important thing is connecting with an audience. And this is true in every phase of business, no matter what your business is connecting to your customer, connecting to the people you're working with, and personalizing it so that they feel that they're brought in to whatever it is you're selling. In my case, I'm selling these things that look impossible. I'm selling a table that floats in the air. I'm selling a time where people are being entertained and it looks like almost anything is possible. And that is only done through the salesmanship and connection with the audience that I engender, or hopefully I engender. I mean, that's what I'm always trying to do.
Yeah. Something that just popped in my head. I don't know why it popped in my head, but when you were talking was this show that I it was on, I think it was around in the early 2000s maybe or something. And it was a show where the guy had a mask and he would reveal how magicians did the tricks.
Oh yeah.
And I was wondering, I thought about this when I was watching it. Like, what do actual magicians think of this? That this guy is, showing how people do the magic or revealing, their tricks rather. Because, there's that old saying, a magician never reveals his tricks, and all that stuff. Like, what do you think about that?
Well, I think you don't reveal your tricks for a very simple reason. If people know how the stuff works, they're disappointed. You literally see their face fall when they know how the trick works. They literally go, really? It's just that? That's all it is? I mean, that's the number one thing. And the thing was, with the masked magician, he revealed illusions. And that mostly doesn't affect. I can take a trick that I have one trick in my routine that a lot of people know, and I can still fool them with it because it's not about the trick.
Yeah, right. Like you were saying,
it's about, and if you've learned your skills, if you've mastered manipulation to the level that myself or many others would have, they won't see it. You'll be like, oh, you've got a thing there. And it's like, oh, really? Where? And it's like, oh, no, you don't. So if you're good at your craft, you can fool them anyway. And once you get them past the point where they're trying to catch you and are caught up in what you're doing, then they don't care anymore about how the trick works.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, because when I've watched, modern famous magicians, I can see stuff that, I've seen on that show, or, the same kind of thing, but I'm still entertained by it. I'm still like, oh wait, how do you do that? Even though like I've seen, maybe similar things, or they're always evolving their techniques or their tricks.
Well, plus also, Penn and Teller are famous for revealing tricks. One of their best routines I've ever seen is called Blast Off, where Teller goes in a box and he takes it apart, and then his head's over here and his arms over here. Then they do it again with plexiglass boxes, and you see Teller crawling around underneath, sticking his head up here, sticking his arm up there, and you're more impressed by it than you were when you saw the trick. And they totally reveal how it works, but you're more amazed because how they thought that up is it's astounding. And so sometimes knowing a little bit of the trick or knowingly revealing the trick can be a routine in itself.
Yeah, there's also that aspect of humor. I can imagine that being, funny. They're showing you, they're revealing the trick. It's also just showing you what goes into it, and that's probably just entertaining in itself. Just being able to see how they actually did it is entertaining all in itself.
Yes, and how they thought it up, and how they learned the cues so that he's in the right place at the right time, and it's just wonderful to watch.
Yeah, this is kind of a different question, but I thought this might be interesting. If magic did exist, or what would something that you'd want to be able to do? What would that magic trick or something? If it's not a trick, it's real magic. What would you want to be able to do?
Well, the interesting thing is. I have a book series about a psychic detective called the In the Mind series. It starts with the book Fire in the Mind, and it features a psychic lead character who can actually gets premonitions, he gets visions. And the interesting thing about all of that is I'm a total skeptic. I don't believe in any of that stuff, and yet I am compelled to write about it as if it not only that it exists, but that it exists and there's rules for how it can exist. So I find that a very funny quirk of fate in my case, since I am such a skeptic. But I think premonitions or the ability to be aware of things would come in really handy.
Yeah, it would definitely come in handy, but at the same point, I don't know if I'd want to be aware of like, the future or something like that, because then you might be worried, or, it could be beneficial as well though, but it's kind of that pros and cons to everything, I guess, but yeah.
The thing I wouldn't want, because my lead character actually can read minds, but the problem is that in a crowded room, he's just getting bombarded by random thoughts of people, because if you think about it, people are always thinking around you, and it's kind of a hellish experience for him, because he has to really focus to shut it out.
Yeah.
And I think so. I really wouldn't want to be able to read minds, because that it would just, you never have your own thoughts to yourself.
Right. Yeah, definitely. We'll touch on your books and everything, but I still want to talk about magic just a little bit, just because I'm fascinated by it all. Did you ever deal with stage fright? That's something that I find a lot of people, they're afraid of public speaking. I don't know if it's something you maybe were just drawn to it, so you didn't have that issue, but there's a lot of people that are afraid of, public speaking and things like that. Did you ever have stage fright or anything?
Well, they've always say that one of the biggest fears people have is getting in front of an audience and delivering a speech. I have been doing it my entire adult life, so it doesn't bother me. The thing I'm experiencing, and I've only started experiencing it in the last few years, is nervousness on my way to a gig. But once everything is set up and I'm ready to go with the show, it just all falls away, and I'm in my element. And one of the things I would recommend to anybody who is fearful about doing a presentation is practice. The more the reason I'm comfortable is I know how the show's going to go. I know what's going to follow, and every show is not exactly the same. Sometimes I'll add different effects. Sometimes I'll pick and choose things that I decide to do last minute. But every routine that I do, I'm comfortable with. and I know how I'm going to open, and I know how I'm going to close, and what happens in between, I just kind of let happen. So what I would say is practice, rehearse, and then just let it go and let it happen.
Yeah. Another question that I was thinking is, as far as show business is concerned, you know, it's a lot. People say, you know, it's kind of a cutthroat business. There's a lot of, you know, what was your experience for? I know you said you did Broadway and you worked on the cruise ship and everything. Was the competition pretty high, or how was that? Like, how was the show business aspect of it?
Well, the important thing is that I recommend anybody who goes into show business is treat it like a business. That's one of the things I've always tried to do. I've created a name for it. I call it the artistpreneur, which is you run your own business, and your employee, you're your product.
Yeah.
And when you treat it more like that, it's better for your mental health, because you can't, you know, when you go to an audition, let's say a reading for a part in a show, you go to the audition, and there's, you know, 20 other people who look like you in the room. And
Yeah.
even when I'd go to magic auditions, I'd go in and there'd be 20 other guys playing with cards and stuff, going for that role. And the thing is, you just have to relax and go into it and do your best, and then let it go. And the hard part is, you know, making sure you're prepared. Because anytime I walked out of an audition and was not happy with it, it's because I didn't practice enough so that I was comfortable, or that I got thrown. You know, someone said, someone would say, you know, can you do that differently? Can you do that this way or that way? And I was so locked into what I'd prepared that I couldn't change. And that's the thing to be careful of. Just go in and be flexible and be yourself. The hardest thing it is in this business is to just be you. We're always in show business. People are always trying to be something other than they are.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing to learn is to just be you, and be the you that's the best you.
I think that's with a lot of things in life, right? Because a lot of people try to be something they're not in all different
Yes.
aspects of life, and it's better just to be yourself. And if people don't like that, then oh well. And you know, some will, some won't, right? That's just everything in life.
You know, each of us has a unique way of presenting ourselves. And also there's a unique aspect to your personality. Like, everybody who does magic differently, even though the tricks might be the same. You know, I pull out some tricks at some shows, and I hear a kid in the audience will go, I've seen that. It's like, and I think to myself, yeah, you've seen it, but not the way I do it. So every time you do it, always remember, the only thing you can sell is you. So sell the things that are unique about you, and in whatever you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of tricks, I am going to put the video format up on YouTube, and I was
good.
wondering if you could do a little trick for us here. So if you're
Oh,
listening, you're going to have to go on the YouTube video. Just search "You Succeeded How" on YouTube, and you'll find it there. And if you're listening, like I said, definitely, obviously, keep listening. Go back to the YouTube video and check this out. So yeah, let's see a trick, man.
Well, a little bit here is, this is an ordinary deck of cards. A lot of people think magicians use special decks. And a lot of things I've always said is, if a magician could really do magic, you know, why would he have people pick cards? I think he would just take the cards and change them into whatever he wanted. For those of you who missed that, we'll do it again. So you watch the card. See, it looks like it changes right before your eyes. Just like that. And people go, well, where do the cards go? And I say, usually up the sleeve is the best place to look. It's always a good place. And if you keep your eye on the 6, if you watch it carefully, it actually looks like it disappears. And now, one last thing. This is the thing that takes a few years of practice. Let me just Here we go. I'm going to reach up and make cards appear. And people say, wait, how do you reach up and make cards appear out of the air? And I tell them the truth. You cannot really reach up and make things appear out of the air just like magic. The secret is you have to hide them where nobody thinks to look. For those of you listening to this, I just pulled a deck of cards out of my mouth. And I have to do that because somebody once said my act was tasteless. And I said, no, it tastes like cards. So there we go. A little bit of sleight of hand.
That was really good. That was impressive, actually.
Thank you.
Really impressive. I remember trying my hand at some cards when I was a kid, and I could definitely not do anything like that. But
well, most people can't. I mean, you know, there's always somebody at every event. You know, there's especially if you're doing a show for a family audience. There's always a kid who goes, "Oh, I'm a magician. I can do card tricks." And I always, every time they do, I go, "Okay, well, here's a regular deck of cards. Show me."
Yeah.
And then, oh, that was pretty good. You might want to work on this, that, or the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you never know. Most people can't do the stuff that takes the years of practice, but that's fine. Everybody needs to find the thing that they're really good at. A perfect example is there's a well-known magician named Losander, and I use one of his props. He makes a table that floats in the air. It's a beautiful piece. Been using it for years, and everything in his act is a levitation. Everything is something that floats in the air. And there's no one who can do that better than him. Every levitation, it's different props. I mean, he does things with bubbles where the bubbles are under his control. And then he does things with a table and a book. And every time it's poetry to watch him work. And that's what still excites me about doing magic is you never know who's going to be affected by what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. It's also, you know, that help of escapism from reality, which I think is huge for when people have issues. You know, you can really help people.
Yeah, real life is pretty depressing right now. This last year has been a little rough on everybody.
Yeah, we all need magic.
Yes. And I've actually learned to master Zoom shows, which actually have some benefits because with a Zoom show, you can bring a prop right up to the camera. And that means you can do close up as well as stage effects. So it's very, very nice.
Interesting. Yeah, that's crazy. So we've mentioned your books, and I want to, you know, kind of go into that now.
Sure.
So what made you become an author? What was your inspiration for that?
I've actually been writing since I was about 16 years old. I wrote puppet shows and incredibly bad plays and things like that when I was very young. But also, several of my friends were authors. I worked with a man named Park Godwin in a show when I was 16 years old, and he was an author. And we became quite good friends. Also, Marvin Kaye, who's a publisher of many, many, many books. Two of them are magic books that I read, very, very good magic books, because it really taught the idea of performing magic as opposed to just learning tricks. And the thing about that is I knew them, and they'd always be like, okay, well, I can't be bothered now because I got to go write. And, you know, I got to go write. And so I started writing back then, and I wrote some short stories and things that weren't very good. And I wrote murder mystery shows that ended up being produced. I was with a company that was doing murder mysteries at restaurants. And that was a very big thing in the 90s. Did very well with that. And in the 1990s, I sold some short stories to some magazines. And then I said, okay, well, you know, I've had a novel in my head since I was in my 20s. Let me start to write it. And that's what started it. I got into the habit of writing. And the first one, actually, the first book I wrote was called Messiah. And it's a post-apocalyptic novel. And I actually have just pulled it out of the place it's been hiding for 30 odd years, and I'm currently rewriting it, and I'm actually going to release it this next year. But the quality of the writing, shall we say, has come a long way. And then in the 90s, I started writing the Dr. Weiss novels, the In the Mind novels. And one of my favorite stories is the inspiration to write a novel that has gone on to win over 14 awards, which is called The Muse. This novel, I wrote a short story called The Dark, which is a horror story, and I'd never written horror before. And then the next day I found out that Stephen King got hit by a truck and was in the hospital. And it was a weird feeling because I got this idea of, well, it was like something wanted to write a horror story, and since he couldn't do it, it came to me, which is of course the height of ego, because I'm not Stephen King, for goodness sakes. But the idea stuck with me, and I ended up writing this book about a famous author who's a serial killer who has this creature living inside of him. He gets hit by a truck, and this creature goes off and finds a new host. And that host is then pulled into a desire to kill. And that became the entire story behind The Muse, which, as I said, has gone on to win 14 awards and has been one of my most successful novels. And it's funny where the ideas come up and how they end up germinating. And it became a very, very fun ride. The most exciting thing with the books to this day is the ride that I get to enjoy while writing them.
Yeah. Well, you kind of touched on this, but I was wondering your inspiration for writing. You kind of touched on Stephen King. Is there any other authors or anybody that you kind of drew inspiration from? You kind of read their books and you're like, wow, this might be something I'm into. Like, did you have any people like that, any idols, I guess?
Yeah. I'm always reading, or I have an audiobook in the car, always, all the time. My favorite author of all time is Dean Koontz. He wrote some amazing books. And it's interesting now that I've been listening to audiobooks of some of his earlier work. And since I'm pretty much familiar with his later books, to read his earlier books is kind of eye-opening, because it's like, I can see how they could have been improved a little bit. And so I'm kind of looking with that editorial eye as well as the writer eye. But he writes exciting thrillers, and they all have a bit of the paranormal in, which all of my books, there's always something paranormal or weird or stuff. And he also writes characters that you really become attached to and really care about. I'm another big fan. I've read every one of the J.D. Robb books, the In Death books, Silence and Death, and all these things in death. It's 30. It's like 53 books at this point that's written and in the J.D. Robb books. And they're all great, and seeing the evolution of the characters and things really gives you inspiration as far as writing for a series, especially a long series. My goodness, 52 books, and they're still New York Times bestsellers.
Wow,
and
that's amazing.
And she, of course, by the way, is the name for Nora Roberts' pen name of J.D. Robb. She writes all of them, and it's a break from her romances, in which it's a police procedural that takes place in the future. So great cool stuff.
Awesome. You kind of touched on how you dive into your writing, but what is the writing process that you go through when you're writing a book? Do you have to sit down, how do you get in like a flow state when you're writing?
I always try to write new material in the morning. And if I don't hit my word count, then I'll do some in the afternoon as well. But I always try to do it fresh first thing. And it's the major thing that helps is the habit. One of the things that any business person will tell you is you get into habits, good habits. And one of them is getting up and getting right to the computer and writing, looking at editing the previous day's work, which always gets me back into the story. And then writing. I try to hit about 3,000 words a day. And if you think about it, in 3,000 words a day, you can write a 90,000 word novel in a month.
I really like that idea of editing the work you did the day before, so you kind of get in the story. It's fascinating. I've tried writing a book just for fun, like a hobby. It's like a fantasy kind of book. And my
cool.
problem when I try to write is it's that habit of writing. Like when I'm in it, I get in a flow state really easy. So I'm really enjoying myself. And I don't know how you do this, but when I've tried writing, I just kind of, freestyle, just kind of start going and things pop in my head and I write them down. I don't have like a plot, like this is going to happen and this is going to happen. I don't write that down or anything. And I get in that flow state, but getting the time to actually write and actually setting aside time is something I don't have, that habit. And, it's just a hobby. It's just something I enjoy doing when I do it. So it's not like I'm trying to pursue that as a career or anything. But yeah, I think, like you said, the habit is something that's definitely needed if somebody's out there and they're listening and they want to become an author. What could somebody do, or what do you think, what are some tips if somebody's wanting to become a successful author? What could they do? Do you have any tips for people that you've learned throughout your career as an author?
Yes, the number one thing I would say to them, first of all, is learn about book marketing before you launch the book. Don't do it the way I did of launching the book and then going, gee, it's not selling. I have to learn about marketing. I was very lucky in magic that I very much made a living because of word of mouth. People would see me and they'd recommend me to someone and recommend me to someone. And back in the 90s, I used to send out a press kit and a videotape. And then, I got upgraded. I was sending out a DVD. And of course, those things now are totally the way you book stuff is through a website. So, you have your website really good. But the thing I would say is learn what your author tools are. Some of your author tools are your website. Your author tools are, being on Amazon Author Central. That's, I think, very, very important because Amazon is, it's the big market right now. You're not going to go anywhere if you're not a member of Amazon. And learn about writing ads and writing copy. The kind of things I didn't think about when I started. And now I realize are very, very important. And the thing I would recommend to any author starting out is remember what your three most important things are for selling your book. Your first is your cover. Don't do it yourself. Just don't. Hire a professional and someone who knows the market, because your book has to look like the genre it's in. Yeah. One of the things about my books is you can look at them and they look like the other books in that genre, which is very important. Second is learn how to write book descriptions, because that's your second. Your cover's first, your book description is second. And your third most important thing is learning about keywords. And now there are tools. There's a wonderful tool called Publisher Rocket, which all it does is you take concepts of your book, feed them into a keyword thing, and it will suggest keywords that will really help sell your book. And those are your major selling tools. Because if you've got a bad description, people are going to look at it and go, I don't know. But if you've got, so you need those three things: a good cover, a good description, and really good keywords that will pull people to your book.
I'm looking at your website right now, your store at the books, all different genres and everything. And I'm looking at the covers and I really like them. And they do look like other books I've seen in those genres, right? So like the paranormal mysteries, it's kind of got this.
Yeah, they've got,
yeah, it's really cool.
The thing is, I've been using the same designer since I started, and she makes sure that all the In the Mind books, the paranormal mysteries, all have a similar, so that you can tell they're all part of a series. They look like the other books, and yet they look a little bit different. And that's what's happening with the book I'm releasing in February, which is Infection in the Mind, which actually, if you go to my website, rjlewis.com, it's on the first page is that it's coming in February. It's always good. And again, I had to learn how to create the author website. I do my own websites, which is great because I save a lot of money, but I studied websites. I studied author websites. And what do you need? Well, you need what's happening now. You need what's coming. And you need, there should be a bio, but it shouldn't be too long. And it should just, there should be enough there that people feel they're getting enough, but not so much that you're trying to overwhelm them with your credentials.
Yeah. I really like the whole website layout. You can tell, even the background on your website goes with the entire theme of your books, which in the covers, and I really like that. One thing I wanted to ask you about the different genres, because we have paranormal mysteries, we have horror, and we have urban fantasy, which is, I'm actually really interested in the Wizards of Central Park West. I might check that book out myself. I'm just obsessed with like magic, like wizards and medieval kind of stuff, or like anything with like magic. So I might check that book out. So yeah, definitely might buy that one. But what is your favorite genre to write? Because you've written quite a few genres. Oh, you even have a romantic suspense.
Yes, which I wrote with my wife. We did alternating voices, and it's alternating chapters of the male voice. It's male first person and then female first person, and the first person changes chapter to chapter. It's really a unique way of doing a book, but it came out really, and that one actually has won 2 awards for romantic suspense. My rule of thumb is this: what is my favorite genre? And the answer is the one I'm writing at the time. I love them all. I have to tell you, I'm probably going to be doing more horror novels in the next year or so, because I need a few more standalones. I love the Dr. Weiss series. And as I said, it's got, I'm releasing the 10th book in that series, but I need some more books that are just a one-off, like The Vanishing, The Muse, and Kept in the Dark, which are my horror novels. And the fun thing about the Wizards of Central Park West is that actually originally wasn't my idea. It was an idea of a very good friend of mine who was an author, again, a friend of mine who wrote. And he said he had this idea for a book called The Wizards of Central Park West, with this lead character named Marlowe, who was a wizard and all of this. And he actually passed away before he was able to write it. So a few years ago, I was inspired. I said, it was a good idea. Let's see how it works out for me. And it's a completely different book than what he conceived of, because there was no notes or anything. He left a few chapters. So I got the names of a couple of characters, but then I ended up writing this entire book. And a part of it is kind of a tribute to a friend who loved fantasy as you do. Yeah.
I love that. You were able to do something for him in his passing, and kind of, he lives on through that book, right? And
I dedicated that book to him, and I mentioned this story at the beginning of the book so that everybody knows. I'm not trying to, I got sneaky, and no, it was it's a tribute, and I hope he's looking down and smiling that with the way it turned out.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you were mentioning horror and how that's kind of what you're going to be writing more of, is horror. And personally, for me, I do not like horror. I don't get it. I don't understand the fascination with it. It's just not my thing. Like horror movies, I really don't understand it. Everybody loves horror movies. I don't want to get scared. I really don't understand. I've worked at like haunted houses and stuff, and people love to get scared. I just don't get it. But that's just me. I know people love horror. So what do you think that why do people have this fascination with horror? Because I don't understand it. Maybe you understand it. I don't.
the thing about horror is this, for me, is when you read someone like a master at it, like Stephen King, he's got the frights and he's got the disgusting stuff. That's a big thing in horror, is there has to be the disgusting stuff. And I don't like horror novels that have too much of the disgusting stuff, because but when you read someone like a master like Stephen King, the most important thing that comes across to you is the characters. And that's why I got into horror, is because I came up with these characters. Like in the novel Kept in the Dark is Jake Hurd. He's this night guard who ends up hospitalized because he slit his wrists, but it turns out something in the dark slit his wrists. So it became this battle between this man and these things that exist in the dark. And the reason he's in this battle is he was a part of an accident that released them. And he feels morally obligated to send them back where they came from. And to me, when I originally wrote the story, it was a short story. And again, that sold to H.P. Lovecraft and Magazine. In the original story, there were just these things in the dark and he eventually dies. But when it became a novel, suddenly it was imbued with this moral standard of this man rising above all of these terrible things that happened in his life, because he felt an obligation to correct what he had done wrong. And he went from being this kind of sad character who was falling into this awful fate to being this sort of noble warrior. And that's what makes it special for me. And that's like my most recent book, The Vanishing. This woman rises above these horrible things that have happened in her life because there are people mysteriously disappearing, and she feels a moral obligation to find out why and stop it. And again, she becomes a noble warrior. So that's the thing that attracts me in horror. Yes, we can have the disgusting things, we can have the monsters, and The Vanishing is full of the Jersey Devil and all kinds of monsters from ancient lore. But it's the characters who rise up to fight the monsters. And when you read Stephen King, I mean, like when you read it's these kids rising up to battle this creature that become the main story and the thing you actually care about.
Yeah.
So that's what I think people really care about.
Yeah, definitely. Something I just thought of. Where are you located at? What state?
I live in New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay.
Somebody has to, and interestingly, a lot of my novels take place in New Jersey as well.
There you go.
So I've created fictional towns.
Yeah, I was just thinking because I live in Colorado, so I live like an hour from the Stanley Hotel, and so I was wondering if you've ever been there.
Oh wow!
I know you're a big fan of Stephen King, so yeah, it's beautiful. I live like an hour from there, and it's in Estes Park. I live in Greeley, Colorado, so it's lovely just to be able to go there, and explore the hotel. It's definitely, if you ever get the chance, I'm sure that would be somewhere you'd love to go.
I've actually driven through Colorado. My in-laws, my brother-in-law and his family live there. And I performed in the 2002 I performed at the 2002 Olympics in Salt Lake City. And so I was working the Coca-Cola, they had a tent called Coca-Cola on the Ice, and I was performing in it. So, but to get there with all my equipment, I had to literally drive from New Jersey all the way to Salt Lake City over a period of several days. And driving through the mountains of Colorado was a truly amazing experience. It is just beautiful. So breathtaking. The views there are just amazing.
Yeah. I would recommend, if you ever have a chance, I know you're a big fan of Stephen King, so definitely, if you're ever in Colorado again, definitely check out the Stanley Hotel.
All righty.
One thing, you actually have a free book. It's Fire in the Mind. So anybody's listening and they want to, maybe try it out. They're listening and they're like, "Ooh, this sounds like he's got some really good stuff," and they're like, they want to try it, but they don't want to invest in the money at the moment. Or you can get the first. I believe this is the first series of one of the books.
Yes, Fire in the Mind is the first in the now 10-book series featuring Dr. Leonard Wise, a parapsychologist and a true psychic. And you can get that book for free at Barnes and Noble or at Amazon. Or if you want, go to my website, RJ Lewis, ARJAY Lewis.com. And all the links are right there on the first page to get the book for free. And I think you really enjoy it. It's about Leonard Wise dealing with someone with the ability of pyrokinesis, the ability to start fires with their mind. So it's kind of a real fun ride and introduces the character and introduces the situations.
Awesome. Interesting. I want to talk about just a few more books so people can kind of get an idea
Sure.
of, descriptions, books maybe, if
Sure.
they're interested in reading them. So you have the Vampires of Greenwich Village, it looks like.
Yeah, Vampires of Greenwich Village.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Obviously, you're not a New Yorker.
No.
The Vampires of Greenwich Village is actually the second book in the Wizards of Central Park West, which is going to be a trilogy. The third book, the Werewolves of Washington Square, should be coming out in the end of this year. But and this follows a New York police detective, Eddie Berman, who they find a severed head at a homicide site, who looks up at him and tells him he's been summoned, which takes him on a pathway of finding out that there is a group of ancient wizards disguised as the homeless people in Central Park. And they bring him in, and he must master abilities to stop an ancient demon that's been released. And the Vampires of Greenwich Village is the second in that, in which the Lord of the Undead, known as the Dracula, is coming to New York City to wreak havoc and raise the vampires in battle against mortals in New York. And he must rise to this occasion. So, and also the birth of his third child is imminent at the same time. So he's being pulled in a lot of different directions. And I have to say, the Wizards of Central Park, both that and the Vampires of Greenwich Village, there's magic, there's comedy, there's the byplay between Eddie and his partner, Luis. And it's just a fun pair of novels that I think you'd really enjoy reading.
Yeah, I definitely think I would enjoy reading those. If people listening, they're into fantasy or just, a thriller or anything, I feel like they would. Even your horror, I might be interested in. Like I said, I'm not a big horror person, but maybe I got to give it a try. Yeah. So I have one last question for you.
Sure.
Before I let you go, and that is, the show's about success, how to be successful in all different aspects of life. What does success mean to you as an individual? Personally, because for me, I feel like success could mean different things for different people, not the society's idea of success, which is wealth and fame and that whole thing. What does success mean to you?
Success means to me, and has meant to me for all of my adult life, is being able to live the way I choose. That's one of the hallmarks, the idea of, you make a lot of money. Well, if you make a lot of money, why? Well, then I can live the way I want. Well, you don't need to make a lot of money to live the way you want. Famous quote is, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's been very true. Now, I've worked very hard sometimes. I've also done things where I've had 4 gigs in one day. I had that happen in December on that day where it snowed, is I had 4 shows in one day. And that was a stressful situation. But at the end of it, I'm like, what a great day. I made people happy everywhere I went. Carrying the equipment through the snow wasn't much fun, but I enjoyed it. And I get to, my wife and I are very happy. My daughter is raised. I paid her way through college. She has no college debt, all from doing magic and all from doing this stuff. And now I get to write my books, and I'm that career is building, and I'm watching this new career take off. As the other career, I'm doing less than I used to, between these times, and just at the age I am. So that would be my suggestion, is if you get to live the way you want and enjoy the life you have, that is what success truly is. And every day I experience that. So I'm very grateful. I've been very lucky in my life.
Well, thank you for coming on. It's been a great episode, and I think people will get a lot
My
from
pleasure,
this.
Dwight.
Yeah,
I
thanks for
hope
coming
so.
on.
Hopefully people will gain an insight into these things and in their career. And again, if you are an artist, I really recommend trying to do it for a living, because you can make a living as an artist. You just have to learn how to.
Yeah, that's one thing. Society, talking about society and what they think.
Oh,
Society
yeah.
pushes the idea that, if you're an artist, you
Oh,
can't
yeah.
make a living off of that. Like for magic, for instance, so if I went, if most people went, when they're like a teenager and they told their parents, "Hey, I'm going to become a magician for my career," a lot of them are going to get the whole, "No, you're not."
Yeah, kind of like, you mean the way my parents acted. Yeah, kind of. But you can. But you have to learn how to market it. You have to learn how to sell it, and you have to learn how to it's selling like any other career. It's just a different kind.
Yeah. Speaking of marketing and selling, where can people find you at if they want to read your books or learn about your magic, anything like that?
Well, you can see my books at arjaylewis.com. My magic is at rjmagic.com. You can see my sizzle reel of me performing on, I use mostly shots from a cruise ship I was on, because we were able to shoot the audience again and again and again. And also for my books and things, I recommend going to Amazon. Follow me there. Follow me on BookBub. Follow me on Goodreads. Those are the places all the book people like to go to. Great places. And follow me. See what's coming up. See what's coming out. And get the free book. Read it. Have a good time.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on again. And had a
Dwight,
really
it's been a real pleasure and an honor. Thank you very much.
Hey, you. Yeah, you listen right there. Did you like this episode? If you did and want to hear more, follow us on your favorite podcasting app, as well as Facebook and Instagram. You can also sign up for a newsletter to get notified of new episodes and more from your email. That link and form is on Facebook. Also, make sure you leave a comment and review the show. It would really help a brother out. See you next episode.